Hey. Ahoy, mamas. Welcome, welcome, welcome aboard the Mother Wild Educational Summit Mothership. And this session marks our closing ceremony. You work for a law firm. Okay, let's go ahead and roll shoulders up and back and down, and let's take 3 deep breaths. So first, deep inhale in through the nose. Loud sigh out through the mouth. Second, deep inhale in through the nose. Loud sigh out through the mouth. And third and deepest, inhale in through the nose and hold at the top. And when you're ready, just gently release it. Well, it's been a delight to be somewhat of a boat captain. You. And yeah, thank you for the panelists for on top of a full-time parenting or grandmothering or full-time jobs, taking your time to share your wisdom with us. Thank you again. So, where should we begin? I was thinking, yeah, just where I would love to maybe share. Oh wait, hold on. Let me think about this. Should we go into, well, we don't even need a breakout room. So I think can I just read you a little something I wrote? Because it came up in the discussion. I think you were both at the last one, right? Or Afton, maybe, no. But we mentioned the beginning of the Ivy and how it's hard to be patriotic or to have like the separation between nations when you've grown up in the same classroom as them. And so a little history on the International Baccalaureate. It was Marie-Thérèse Mauret who led the International School of Geneva in 1925 to 1950. And it's thanks to her that they laid down the foundation for what was to become the International Baccalaureate. And so in 1948, bearing in mind that World War II had just ended a couple years earlier in 1945, this Marie-Thérèse published a booklet for the UNESCO entitled, "Do Education Techniques for Peace Exist?" And her groundbreaking paper wondered whether it was possible to propagate peace by putting young French, British, German, American, and Japanese kids in the same classroom, and not to inculcate them with any sense of patriotism, nor teach them any history, and definitely not linger on the part that their parents had blown each other's skulls to pieces. And the proposal was rather to simply see what would happen, as kids that tend to not hold any resentment, and abracadabra, it worked, which was a monumental achievement that even churches had failed to achieve up until then. So to be accepting of all nationalities, regardless of race, color, religion, and belief, since these students would ultimately become childhood friends. And so the vision here and the reason for the summit and the reason for the meeting paper and the reason for the podcast and the reason for like meeting up in Thailand is really along those lines of what Marie Therese had imagined, which is like, I think we all agree that I or personally, maybe it's because I come from a long lineage of educators, but that education should be free and accessible for all kids, like one big global public school. And I guess it already exists, right? We all have the internet and all kids have the same access and rights to it, irrespective of their parents' paycheck. So virtual online learning can be free and no longer for the privileged. And I think her vision, Marie-Thérèse vision, was truly to bring peace through the classroom. And then from what I've understood, it's the waves after that made it be monetized and become what it became, which was international schools are businesses. So if the internet, thanks to the internet, knowledge is no longer scarce, is Google God, Wikipedia, Siri, anything you want to learn in seconds for free. So nowadays it's not what we learn or how we learn, or it's more like where we learn it from and whom we learn it with. And I personally believe that excellent teachers make all the difference. They always have and they always will. That will never become obsolete. Learning from people we love and people we respect and people we admire. With that said, I think in the first panel you both, Afton and Meredith, were in, Noam Gerstein was saying, like with Bina School, she works with like the small humans she kept referring to. And I do think there's a foundation that needs to be taught to the little humans, like the basics, how to read, how to type, how to navigate the internet. My husband still laughs at me like, oh my God, your Google searches, Carmela, you're terrible. Like that should be taught to kids, how to effectively Google things. But from there, and sure, math and some foundational stuff, but like from there, kids really can learn the rest. So what if moving forward, if for students past, let's say, the age of 12, or whoever has learned like what we were saying, the foundations, literacy, numeracy, core competencies, and Googling, so that schools no longer issue transcripts and progress reports and record, grades and report cards, but instead that these students could document and store their own learning journey. Students, the idea would be that students could own their own digitalized academic records that would follow them throughout their lifetime and be updated as they grow, just kind of like a CV, but starting a CV at the age of 12. Students could, upload at any time. Students, we don't call them students, lifelong learners could upload online at any time, any place, any pace. There's no deadline to learning until my mom she keeps mentioning or referring to this lady that she met in Italy that said that she didn't want to die because every day she learned something new. And so, we don't stop learning ever. So what if these e-portfolios, which is what I'm trying to get all the schools to agree to using one e-portfolio, all these global schools. What if the motivated self-reflection, self-evaluation, self-assessment, as well as cross-referencing it with teachers, educators, mentors, adults that intersect their life. And then it could also be peer agreed feedback and inclusive of collaborative work and all that stuff. Because we know that static skill sets and rote memorization goes out the window the second you graduate. So letting students design their own path because they're the only ones who know what they're truly interested in and curious about. Nobody else can be in there with you. Learning. What if students learn what AI, a Google search, Siri, ChatGPT, Wikipedia, or YouTube video will never be able to replace, which is truly knowing thyself. So any student with access to the internet could plug their info into this e-portfolio idea free of charge, much like open source when it started, this global diploma that we're trying to it already exists. It's just gathering it, making it universal so all these global schools can use it, and then eventually international schools could also apply it for any students that don't quite fit in the boxes, and same for national schools. Why not? So it could be the certificate that would be free for the students, for the parents, and for these schools. Because who got the authority to write the national? We saw it on the first opening. It's these 10 men from universities. And then the international one, more Marie Therese, but then it was molded to become businesses. So Yeah, let's step away from other people designing the curriculum and just letting students, lifelong learners to dictate what they're going to enter in that Google search engine. So that's the vision. Really breaking away from the traditional model of external experts deciding what we should do and, trusting that the curriculum will know better, or teachers will know better, university admissions officers will know better, or parents, or professors, or human resource recruiters, or any force outside of ourselves will know better, but instead moving toward a more empowered model. So bottom line, and this is what every progressive school founder has said, that we're moving toward a more individualized and personalized way of learning. So that is the future. So no matter how advanced technology becomes, we're always going to be creatures, social creatures who want to interact. And so there's always going to be need for real time, real life. And Meredith, as you know, I don't know, you didn't meet us for the Wobbly Mastermind, but getting to know people online and then meeting them in person is just a really special experience that I think is what our grandkids will be going through. They'll match with people they have similar interests with all across the world, and then hopefully they'll find pockets to meet in person. So yeah, I think the future will look something about alternating time alone to learn alone online, and then activities with other real life humans. Yeah, so I do think we're at a pivotal moment in the history of education, and truly grateful to all these visionaries who've gone against the grain to open these progressive, innovative, alternative schools, global schools. And yeah, I think it's going to be easier and easier for future learners to follow their path, because this is going to be made much easier to join. We all know that. I think that this is the way humanity is going, or at least hoping to see it go in that direction. So we're not going to do a breakout, but I would love to hear from you ladies what you might have learned from the summit, or what are you taking away, or if you didn't join anything, then where you stand on education right now. Would love to hear your visions and your nuggets. Who wants to go first? He should go first. This is all for him, really.
Afton. I will say, just so Afton can get everybody out of their Zoom space, or their Zoom space, right? This has been a really exciting experience for me, as I'm like actively doing so much research that is directly applicable to this kind of guiding question. And one thing that there's so many things that I always want to jump in on, especially even just now, Carmel, you're talking about. But I think that two big takeaways for me that I also am actively kind of working on is, I mean, what's really fun, and not to go too much into my work, but I'm building a tool as part of my dissertation to help support this kind of global learning through this. How do we integrate reflection as part of learning? And my vantage point is using writing and creative writing as a way to kind of think about how we can have conversations with what we're learning, right? Like that's kind of what the goal is, whether you're having a conversation about what you're learning with other students in virtual reality or in an actual physical space. The connections that we're making through conversation with, with a teacher, with our peer, all of the ways in which we dialogue about what we're learning is a form of reflection that I personally think should be modeled, and students do need to have. Training isn't the right word, but you do have to cultivate a reflective mindset. And I think one of the things that I've really been taking away from certainly all of the experts in the room who've been working with kids for decades is that reflection is not enough of our educational model. There's no space for it in the traditional public school. I mean, Afton, you could probably speak to this, that the benchmarks and the goals that have to be met, at least in the American system, don't leave a lot of space for reflection as a form of assessment. I'd like to blow up the actual word assessment, but I think we kind of have to break it apart and blow it up if we're going to have a conversation about accredited global diploma. We're talking about a system, so systems have guardrails and guidelines, and we have to have this measurement tool. For me, AI gives you that data. It gives you an opportunity to do a qualitative deep dive into ongoing learning for students, if that makes sense. So, Carmela, yeah, go ahead.
How would this be applicable? Would this be like, all right, you've learned something, you've read a book, and you're going to write a reflective piece, like let's say 2-3 pages on what you learned, like self-reflect, or a reflective, a reflection of what you've learned. Do you then submit it to a bot, or do you submit it to a real life person, or either?
The reflection, in my opinion, is ongoing and goes hand in hand with learning. So I don't necessarily think reflection has to be an end product, but something that is developed along the way. So you don't necessarily use an AI as an input system. It's like a learning buddy that goes along with you. It's a place where you can ask questions. You can follow your curiosity as you're deep diving into a topic, and you have all of those conversations and those learning experiences available as like a part of your resume, so to speak. You get the chance to think about and look at how a student works through a problem, how they where their lines of inquiries go. And then you can teach information literacy, how to search, how to be engaged, how to be a digital citizen through the learning process. So there's a way to harness all of these things that a global human, I think that we're speaking to global competencies, really. We're not just speaking about getting kids into a university system. We're actually, and this is another takeaway. And it also, again, like I could grab onto the things that I care about, like I think we all do, but this idea of sustainability as a curricular framework and the UN goals and anchoring, if we're really looking, when we say problem-based learning or project-based learning, like everything in life is a project that we're trying to, is like a problem. That's what we do for a living, right? We like fix problems. We try to fix problems, whether it's like what to do for dinner or what are we going to do on the weekend? How are we going to balance all the things in our lives and like make sure our children are nurtured and like growing and thriving, and how are we thriving, and all of those things. So, I have a lot of hope and a lot of excitement and seeing. And I think the key with this also, that is a real takeaway for me, is the power of collaboration and the power of idea exchange. And Carmela, I have to give you a lot of credit for bringing together such a wide-ranging, community of passionate educators. Educators, I think, is not enough of a word. It doesn't encompass enough what that it just suggests way too small a space. Not saying that small space is the space, like that's the space that matters. But I think the word educator doesn't quite capture it all. So
Loving the double rainbow around you, by the way.
yeah, oh my God, look at that. I'm like, oh, the truth, the knowledge. Yeah, it's a really beautiful morning here. So I'm glad you're getting to share in it. So
Thank you.
And when you were talking about assessment, did you mean more like completing the high school or the credentials? Like you think more like accountability wise? Is that what you kind of were leaning towards when you guys were talking about that?
I think with assessment, I'm thinking about like what rubric do we use to make sense of a student's portfolio? What are the objectives? What are the skills that we're looking for them to, if we're looking at a reflection and product oriented, a portfolio is a full 360-degree view of the way a child or a learner or a person, little human, processes, synthesizes, summarizes, evaluates, and then takes that knowledge and turns it into something else. So assessment isn't so much like, do they get 100 on a test? Obviously, it's more, are you there yet? You know, are you there yet in your process and your journey towards mastering this concept? Are you, and it's more, again, like, I kind of think of it as, I haven't done this yet, but I know I'll have to go through an oral exam for my dissertation, and that terrifies me. A, because I'm a long-winded thinker, and B, it's very difficult for me to be, concise and like answer the question without thinking about a million things, So, but that is a great way to assess. What's that?
That about you, that's self-reflection. There you go.
Right, right. It's a fine line between self-criticism and self-reflection. But you know what I mean? I think the assessment is in the between the lines, so to speak, I guess. But on a global, this is a question we ask in public schools. Kids need to know how to learn. They need to read, and they need to have high levels of literacy, and they need to have the ability to do math, and we have to measure those things, in a way. So assessment, I think, is a really big word that Carmela, you were talking about this, the words that
Yeah.
are very big and can hold kind of anything you pour into it, for better or worse. I'm going to stop talking now. I really want to hear Afton, and I want to hear you guys sort of, if you have thoughts, or we're both entrenched in the American system, so I know that that's like our vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, I think our assessments are too heavy, right? There's just too much in them. It's too complicated. Like, I'm just thinking about our math assessments and how instead of measuring math, they're measuring like reasoning and problem solving, but it's such a young age. Like with students that can't read, you're not really measuring can they do 2 + 2. You're measuring can they read the problem to understand that they need to apply 2 + 2. Or yes, like that reasoning and problem solving is important, but I think the assessments are so off at their ability level, you know?
Oh, that's
It's
really
like
interesting.
they're not like scaled assessments, right? It's like, okay, here, 2 + 2. Okay, now can you apply it? It's very just, I think the assessments are too heavy too, which is why we're always like, oh, you can't, measure a fish by its ability to climb a tree, right? So yeah, because the fish hasn't grown the feet yet. So can we get the fish to grow the feet? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe something else needs to happen, right? So I don't know, but there are those basic developmentally appropriate skills that you need to be a successful human. You need to know how to add 2 + 2, right? So where do we recreate the standards to make them more developmentally appropriate, more loosey-goosey? I mean, those are US standards, but can there be global ones? And then another thought I have just off of what you were saying, was that um where do like vocational careers fit into something like this, right? Because we're always going to need plumbers, electricians, mechanics, and those are very fulfilling jobs. And it doesn't have to be you're going to travel and change the world. The goal, like for me, when I think about education, the end goal for education is happiness, right?
Yes.
So what will make you happy? That's it. And you can go and explore and learn about that. Um, so takeaways, my biggest takeaway, I guess, from the summit. Thanks so much, Carmela, for doing this. This has been great. You're wonderful, wonderful at putting people together. Um, Mine is kind of like, so I've spent the last 10 years learning how to be a teacher. I, started my teaching career. I had gone away. I was teaching in China, but then I had gone away from teaching to kind of explore education more, and I loved learning about education systems and researching and working in different facets of education. And then I had just missed teaching. So I spent the last 10 years really, really learning how to be a teacher. So that's where my focus has been. But I feel like this summit is kind of like dusting off the cobwebs for me in international education, which has been really great. And just kind of putting my mindset back into it. And what are the inner workings of these different systems. So, and our own in the US, I mean, that's where you and I are both from, but and how are they comparable? And I've learned so much from different people that I didn't even know, like having like worked in my master's, like comparing different education systems, just hearing from people and like the narrative and the stories. It's just very inspiring. So good job, Carmel. Very good job.
Well, um, global standards, is that possible? Oh, yeah.
Well, I think competencies is, we have to change the language around what we're measuring, I think, and what matters. It really, when we talk about what we're measuring, it's about what matters. And right now, what matters is how do you compete in the global marketplace as a worker? Whether you're a blue collar worker, you're a white collar worker, you're an executive worker, you're a farm worker, you know, it's the access, we funnel access through higher education, I guess. And I think, Upton, you're really raising a good point that we call them alternate pathways, you know, like vocational, like you know, that's.
We're gonna need plumbers and we're always gonna need lawyers and doctors and dentists. And, you know, I don't want my pilot of a plane to have had loosey goosey. I want them to like 100% land that plane. So I think realistic, like there's certain things, but like, do you know at 14 that you want to be a pilot, or a plumber?
But I think that one thing that is like really interesting about that, sorry, I'm jumping in there, but the way we treat vocational education, for instance, in New York City, is that you go to a specialized high school. Like there's an aviation high school, but a place like Finland, that's obviously a country versus a city, but vocational, from what I've read, vocational education is almost more like a, you know, like a medical school rotation, you know, like you can deep dive and you can choose not to stay in that. You have the freedom to change. Whereas with the vocational system here, it's like you're saying, you have to lock yourself in really so that you can enter the workforce sooner.
Yeah.
That's really the purpose. It's not for the student, it's for the career, right? Like, I mean, it can be for the student, but it's like, I feel like it's a happy accident when someone really finds the joy in the path, right? Like,
Always say, I mean, like the Scandinavians don't get married anymore because they're like, everyone's gonna have like 2, 3 life partners. And
oh,
the commitment for them is very, but I think same for like careers, like, you know, those my dad who had one career, one job for 50 years of his life, like that's just unheard of. So the fact that like, what if we all had 2, 3 or more careers in our life, then we can pivot, we can learn something else, we can the freedom to change, the luxury to change, as you put it, Meredith.
Oh, that makes
that's
so much
my,
sense because as like a teacher, sorry, Meredith, I didn't mean to cut you off. I feel
no.
so like siloed in my career. It's like I'm contributing to this retirement. Can't really pick a different career at this point. And I could have multiple skill sets, but you know, just your pathway, you're kind of, a lot of people can get very stuck because it's a lot of work to switch. And then you'll be put back in your retirement, at least in the US, maybe different.
Or is this tenure?
No. So we contribute to our retirement system financially. And as a teacher, if I jump to a different career, like some of it will follow, but not very much. It's all very complicated. So when I want to stop my career, yeah, if I were to switch careers, I'd have to switch retirement systems and it's all complicated and messy.
Wow, okay, so it doesn't make it, unlike the Scandinavian countries, make it easy for you to change. Cheryl, we were just welcome. I saw you were at a retreat center. Sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Welcome. We're just sharing some of our takeaways from the summit, and yeah, just there's a lot of questions. But yeah, we're just talking about the freedom to change careers, and yeah.
Yeah.
Especially go ahead, Cheryl. Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Meredith.
We're here. We want to hear fresh perspectives. Fellas.
Well, yeah, sorry I'm late. I got the time wrong. But I'm so glad to be here and to be with you guys. I don't have anything to contribute at this point. I'm just awake. So I'll just lean into you guys whenever I'm ready.
Oh, well, thank you. I think we're gonna keep it short today.
Mm,
We digital sustainability. I wrote down the digital sustainability. Is that what you talked about, Meredith? You talked about, wait, assessing sustainability and the power of collaboration. Yeah, I do believe in that. Those are things that are not in our current educational system.
yeah, I think the community aspect is really important, and I think sometimes we underestimate the power of having a collaboration, a community within among the students and within the among the teachers. There are just so many ways that we can collaborate to learn from each other and just shortcut everything. And I guess for kids, it's well, there's a bigger gap, right, between the teacher and the child, but there's a much smaller gap between the kids, and especially if whether they're in the same age, doing a class on the same grade, or whether there is a mixed age, thing. There's just so much benefit that a child can explain in a much simpler way that another child would understand, right? Um, yeah, I think that if we can leverage on that thing and then to realize, I was just telling somebody about learning stories. I don't know whether you're familiar with that.
Learning.
Learning stories. So it's a way that the people in New Zealand, the teachers in New Zealand do it for the early childhood education system, and they use it as a way of documentation, as a way of exploring what are the new possibilities and opportunities to extend a child's learning. So I think we are really in this whole collaborative state for us to learn from the child and for the child to learn from each other, from the children to learn from each other. So yeah.
Learning stories. You've heard of this? Of course.
No, is this the link, Cheryl, that I put
Yes.
in? Okay.
Well, yeah, this one is from the US, but originally it's from New Zealand. And so what they do is instead of writing like a report, the teacher follows the journey of a child. So they would describe what the child is doing, make hypotheses about what the child is thinking about, and then decide like where do I take this further, and use that as a stepping stone to explore a little bit more.
That's such a sweet.
Okay. Wow.
That's really sweet. Those Kiwis. This is really awesome. So you would, because yeah, sometimes, I mean, I remember when my kids were going through big things, they're like, oh, just write a book about us, someone going through something similar as them so they can like become
Yeah.
their teacher. But this is how they're presenting it to parents, right? From what I've understood.
Yeah, they use it as a documentation to parents, but also as a reflective process for their own work for within the teachers. And it's also presented, it's a very Reggio style, so it's like one documentation hit everybody type of work. And then so it is also presented to the child, and the child can see, this is my journey. This is the way that I'm thinking about this, and this is how I can, this is what what I was doing, and I couldn't put words to it, but now that a teacher or an adult can put it into words, so this is the process that I'm exploring and why I'm doing things this way.
I kind of would need one right now from me. What am I doing? Can someone explain who I am? I wanted to say something about what you were saying about learning from peer to peer. I remember taking my son June to swimming classes. It was like Tuesdays, and it was just like it was like pulling teeth every time, and he didn't want to go, and just like and then finally getting him into the swim gear was like a whole mission. And then he finally got to the pool, and he had like all the other friends, and so he literally didn't swim once. Like he would play with the cones and like run around and do like whatever. And then like getting him out of his clothes and back into winter clothes, and he had like wet hair and he was just whining and cold and then hungry, and then I went with the Japanese moms, and it was just like so exhausting. Like I would just come, I remember Tuesdays were like my dreaded day. I was like, no, not again, for nothing, because he literally didn't swim 1 minute of the swimming class. And I was like, I can't pay more money or spend more time. Like, this is just, I just cannot. And then we went, I can't remember where we went. I think it was maybe in Bali. And June saw a kid who was like 2 years older than him swimming. And June was like, that is what I want to do. And he like had, and I think it's called like the rage to master. Like he just had the rage to master, and he learned to swim, I think, in under like 4 hours. Like he was just like, I'm gonna get there, and he did. And I was like, if only I'd known that, like we wouldn't have wasted so many painful Tuesdays afternoon. And so I think, yeah, benchmarks and all those things, assessments are great, but like at some point, if someone wants to learn something, they will. And it just takes seeing it, oh, someone else done it differently. Hearing Martha Beck and Liz Gilbert talk about like the game of life and the game of school, and how some people succeed at it and some others don't. And it's like, and then what Liz Gilbert was saying about Martha is that Martha was like, I don't need to play either one of those games. Like, I'm just going to remove myself from the games. And like, whoa, that's like a whole new approach of like, why do we need to assess? Who needs it? Like, can we just remove it? Can we, how much can we just unplug from the things that we think are necessary? Like human, I wanted to ask you guys, how do you feel? Because I've been given the side eye, I won't name by whom, but I wrote about what if kids could assess, could just the way we do with TripAdvisor and Google 5 stars and what other things, like, you know, restaurants, Yelp and all of that, where you just can rate. Do you guys think it's ethical to rate teachers or to rate humans? Because someone's like, you cannot do that. But do you think, what if we gave the power to the students to be like, this teacher is a 5-star. I've learned so much through them. And like, I think you know, I had it in high school. There was the history teacher. Everyone loved the history teacher. There's certain, you know, teachers that are excellent. How do you guys feel about ranking and rating humans?
Well, personally,
Same, like,
I think that rating system is an important shortcut that we want to, we have, if like 5 out of 5, we know that this is good. It makes it a lot easier for us. But having said that, if we are like thinking out the box and we're seeing things outside of what they are, and we're not trying to go into this standardized approach, then maybe there could be a better way of providing this information without a typical rating system, if that makes sense. So like a more testimonial style.
the ranking, the ratings.
What's that?
Go to a restaurant that has terrible ratings.
Oh, I'm gonna share my rating. I have a rating for being a professor. I just put it in the box. I just checked it for the first time, and I only have one review, but it's good, and I'm gonna hold on to it for the rest of my life.
Oh, this. Alina thought of rating your landlord. 'Cause
Oh, everyone gets a D.
you have 2 ratings for being
I
awesome.
got 2.
How does that feel? Or how does that, oh wow. Okay, so that exists already. That's awesome. That
I
is,
mean, it's interesting now that I've seen that. Of course, my ego is very much massaged and nurtured, and I'm like, I am the best. Knowing that I had to fail a couple students and they do not have a favorable rating of me. Like they did not.
it's like on, it's like or not Google ratings, like people who have something to mean to say, like that's when they give the 1 star. And even like if you look at your favorite album, favorite restaurant, favorite book, there's always going to be a hater in there. And you're like, what? How can you hate that? Like how? So yeah, sorry.
But I think assessing how teachers make you feel, or that ignition of learning. And for me, I feel like especially working with middle school kids too, where it's this, I even just did this the other day, like my coworker doesn't like me. My teacher doesn't like me. I don't do well in that class. My teacher, the idea, like we sort of funnel it through this, whether we like you or we don't like you, and that defines our performance and our experience in the learning environment, in our work environment. I mean, like this is a human thing where like someone's evaluating you, someone is like judging you on so many, whether it's how smart I am in math or how well I made this spreadsheet or, like how successful
We know we have days on and we have days off. But what if like, I mean, if it is a bell curve and like, of course, like even my favorite restaurant will have bad reviews, but if there's enough people who recognize and see the same talent on a good day, because we're all gonna have bad days, then surely that, again, I don't know. I don't know where I stand on it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely having this information is useful, but again, we don't want to go back to the way that how, school standardize exams, right? So it has to be a way that maybe it's not called testimonials, but it's a write-up, that makes it easier for people to appreciate a whole person, right? If we do too simplified, then we don't get the nuance. Like, if a person gave you a 1 star instead of a 5 star, then it's not a good reflection because it's so siloed into that particular person's experience, and they may have prejudice and misconceptions, and these things are not fully elaborated in a simple rating system.
I hear you. I hear you.
But when you look at a rating, it's not the number of stars. I mean, maybe, but it's really what people have to say about the ratings. Why did you give it a
So drop the rating, keep the text. Yeah, that would be better.
Okay, so where I'm going with this is that I'm hoping with a global diploma that the first people to actually use it will be the progressive schools that are on that list that we know that are like open book. They don't have to report to any Ministry of Education. They're not, they would be the first, but then if it works well, then international schools with kids who just don't fit in the boxes or to finish the IB, like they could be doing the alternative program, which would be this global diploma, and they could switch. So if the parents decide to switch countries and be digital nomads, they could just put their kid at the international school or eventually a national school. So any school, because some national school, a lot, yeah. So they could pick which curriculum they could offer: national system, international IB, and the global diploma. But let's say lots of schools end up doing this global diploma. How can parents pick which school they want to put their kids at for the in-person experience? Because a part of it, I think, will be done online anywhere. But then if they want to meet other students with similar interest or just experience a school setting to be able to go to prom, or which is what I'm hearing from online schools. They're like, it's great, but at some point, like the teenagers want interaction. They want to go to prom. They want to have, soccer games, whatever it is, in-person things that online will never be able to replace. And so how are these parents going to know about the school? Like, can we rate these global schools just the way we would rate a restaurant? So maybe not the person. I think a person might be a bit like, oh, they didn't like me, I'm doomed, or I'm great. Yeah, ego is at stake. But I think ranking a school, an environment,
Yeah, I think that could be possible. And that could be also rated in like based on the needs of a child or the needs of a parent, right? Like, do you have these activities? Then like, the variety of activities, the comprehensiveness of the curriculum, or, things like that we could, put into buckets. Basically things that people will have to think about when they want to choose a school. If we can put them into certain buckets and then use that as a rating, then then you can see quite clearly what's the strength and weakness of a school quite clearly.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
a point. I have a thought, Carmela, just really quickly about where I think you might be going with the rating my professors and the teacher evaluation. Do you want to continue that or do you want to pivot? Because I know we have to be mindful of time.
No, we've got all the time in the world and it's just us. This is more for on if there's going to be certain topics taught online, but I think it's still not really clear in my head, like when kids are learning to read, write, and Google prompt. Like does that need to be in person or can that be done online? And so past that, I think kids can learn online and they're ranking, they're gonna search for what they need to find online. What was your question?
Me? It was more of a comment. I guess I was thinking because being married to a professor who's working a lot with first year freshmen at a community college, I was just saying to him, I was like, there's, if you look at the number of highly qualified academics that are coming out of a whole range of institutions every year who are not getting teaching positions, who are severely underpaid, who are undervalued because they're funneling into the system of the business of education. It's curated who has the right to transmit the knowledge, and it's based on very much the same like old white men process, right? Like
10 what? And I did.
yeah, like so if we figured out, so when I really start going into the what ifs, it's like, how do we connect this incredible cutting, like at the edge of learning science and content knowledge? How can we connect that to any learner? And now obviously this isn't elementary school. This is as you get through, I think, starting in middle school, maybe seventh, up through high school. If you have the level, if you can access the knowledge of someone who has graduated with a higher degree in astrophysics, and you as a young person can find that person online, have access to that person, interact on a scholarly level, on an intellectually curious level, and you remove the gatekeeper institution, then you're really taking that lifelong learning and really individualizing it, but you can create these learning collectives around a line of inquiry, I guess. So if you really want to get like super like, whoa, do we really need the university system? Maybe in like 100 years now. But there is an urgent problem with there are too many people with insane and amazing ideas. And when you think about education, it's the biggest research experiment of all. Like in the United States, there was a woman who came out of Teachers College, Columbia, she revolutionized how to learn how to read. And now it's been 10 years and everybody's like, oh no, that wasn't a good idea. We have a whole generation of kids who have now been the experiment of a literacy project that has no longer changed. What if we have the people who are like on the cutting edge of learning science, being able to teach young minds more? Like it's happening, but how can we make it more? How can we make it more kids getting a chance to have that kind of access? So I'm a little bit all over the place, but I get really excited trying to think about like, we just have all these, everything is there. Everything is there. It's so close. So close.
But I think you'll always gravitate and find like the next red dot, right? You know, the people who will help you to the next level. And I just think there's something about like the way ancient yogis like learned, which was like you showed up to class with one professor or one teacher over and over and over and over until the teacher was like, all right, you've earned the right to to do a teacher training or like to become a teacher, whereas now it's like anyone and their grandmother can just be like, I'll do a 200-hour yoga training. And so it's just that I think we've lost a little bit of that, like the courtship between a student and a teacher of like, show up, I'm going to show up, I'm going to lean into like my interests. But I think when you've been slapped 8 topics a day that you weren't interested in through traditional curriculum, like at some point you're like, what am I interested in? And so I think starting from what Cheryl you're doing, homeschooling, of like leaning into the interest of your kids, and because then in life they'll find those professors and they'll show up and create those bonds. But yes, I don't think, I mean, who knows, maybe we won't need universities anymore. Woo.
I'm going to share an article with you that just came out.
I actually love this idea very much. It's a bit like a mentorship model, you know. Mentorship is very formal, and you know, I think as a mentor, you feel like I have a lot of responsibilities to do, you know. Why would I want to chat with somebody, you know? And so all of these things come up. But if it's less formal, and then just, you know, having a chat with somebody and things like that, I mean, just different levels of commitment that's required to become like a mentor, then that makes it a lot easier to enter and for people to support other people. It's a wonderful model.
I like. So the peers. And I think that's where the rage to master shows up anyways. Seeing someone a couple steps ahead of you and being like, oh, they've done it. Why can't I follow their footsteps and then do it my own way? So wait, what was the Atlantic? I love the Atlantic. Okay, we got to take notes of all of these. And okay, how the Ivy League broke America. Ooh. Mm. Mm.
Mm.
What is it, the statistic that there are way too many graduates for there are jobs requiring like masters for, so that there's just all these, I mean, students with student debt who can't pay it off because they can't get jobs with their degrees that are way too high. Education's one big beast. One big beast, but I think just like the micro schooling and starting from scratch, and oh, Cheryl, what Dawn was saying yesterday was just like, especially coming from Singapore. You guys are onto something and you're doing it at a place where hats off. America is a whole other world. But I did want to say, and if Erica ever listens to this till the end, she asked a question at the end of the 3rd panel about higher education. And I just wanted to let her know, and I forgot to say this, higher education in Europe is mostly free. So, and they take anyone. So I got to study entrepreneurship at the Stockholm School of Entrepreneurship in Sweden and didn't have to pay. So actually, I wonder if you have to be European, but I think they took any students. No, there were plenty of other nationalities. So if anyone ever worries in the US of affording these high university fees. Speaking of, what's the update on your daughter, Meredith?
You mean with colleges? I've created a long list of international schools that I'm requiring her to apply to. She's going to find out in about maybe 3 weeks if she gets her early decision choice. We will incur a tremendous amount of debt if she goes there.
Where are you looking at? What's her first school?
It's she wants to go to the Rhode Island School of Design.
Yes, well done.
But I think she's comfortable. We've had a lot of conversations reflecting on what it means to go to school, what she hopes to get out of it. You know, some of that more like if you asked her at the beginning of the year what she was looking for in a college, it was like, it was like feelings, not necessarily like, oh, I want to go into this entrepreneurship program at Syracuse because that's what they have there. Very reluctant to kind of put herself into a box. And that's very much like her mother. So I'm like totally relating to this, like,
You too? Like, whoa, this is huge.
I'm
Big.
really excited. I'm really excited for her, and it's been such a privilege to kind of be on her journey to self-discovery. And not every student gets to have that, you know. A lot of her peers growing up, going in more traditional schools, because she's in an art school now, so they're very progressive, very open to all kinds of different, you know, it's an art school. They get to express themselves through their learning. It's amazing. But yeah, so she's in a really great place. I don't know what's gonna come, but I feel like, you know, she's a New York City kid. My daughter has grown up in New York City, and I never expected that. So I feel like she's had a little bit of an international, you know, really diverse. She's gotten as close to an international education, I think, as she could have
Yeah.
hoped to get.
New York for
Yeah.
Ladies, we've come to the top over the bottom of the hour. Thanks for joining us, and thank you. That's all.
Wonderful to connect with all of you.
I'll see you two in Thailand soon, and Afton petitions, whatever you need. We're with you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Do you have,
Carmela.
I was gonna say, Afton, are you on the WhatsApp group? Because I would love to reconnect and talk to you a little bit more after our eclipse.
Oh yeah,
So
you were in at the eclipse. Now I was like, you look so familiar. Yes, I'm in the WhatsApp group. Yeah.
awesome.
Yay.
Awesome. That's great. And sorry I had to step out. I had to take a call about other business stuff. I'm sorry. Life is crazy. Life is crazy today.
All right. You're joining. Bye, ladies. Have a great day.